Okay guys, we're going to go over the study guide for the final exam. As you may notice here, there's only one section on the study guide, and that is from the last section we did, producing the television newscast. The reason for that is because the only new questions that will be on the final exam are from this study guide. Every other question will be pulled directly from the news quiz that you already took over the first three sections we did, which was story formats, interviewing, and covering live events and covering planned events. So you'll have, we've got about 30 questions here, and again, it's just overproducing, and then all other questions will be pulled directly from the test, and I mean phrased the same and everything. So if you have your quiz back, and if you submitted it, I should have sent you a copy of the quiz with the correct answers in it. That'll be what you use to study along with this video here. Okay, so we're going to go through producing a television newscast. So the first question is going to be, what is a gatekeeper? A gatekeeper is the person who allows or denies a story getting on the air. Okay, and then the next question is, what are some of the responsibilities of the producer? And there will be, several different answers I will accept, and I will probably ask you to name like 2 responsibilities, and you can get bonus points if you name more. But one of the things they do is they frame the entire newscast. They act as the gatekeeper. They lay out story order. They juggle schedules. They decide story formats. And most importantly, they create the rundown or the lineup. Okay, next question on the study guide is, what is the news whole? Definition and duration. Now, we talk about this both at the beginning and the end of the lecture. We talk about, so the news whole is the amount of time that's actually slotted for news in a 30-minute newscast. So you have 30 minutes, but you have to take out 8 minutes for commercials, 3 minutes for weather, 4 for sports, about a minute for your opens and closes and bumps, and that leaves you about 14 minutes of news. So the news whole is the time allotted for news in a newscast, and the duration of it is about 14 minutes. All right, the 5 types of producers discussed in class. That was the executive producer, the line show producer, the associate producer, the field producer, and the web producer. Now, I want you to not only be able to list these, but also identify who does what. So most importantly, for the executive producer is the person who's responsible for the long-term look of the newscast and the news philosophy. So that was a specific question on the study guide. Number 5, that would be the executive producer. Who prepares the rundown lineup? That would be the line or show producer. The producers that act as assistants are the associate producers. What kind of producer would help set up interviews and do research? That's a field producer. And then who's in charge of social media? That's the web producer. So a lot of these are very easily identifiable just by their titles, Executive, that's going to be obviously the person that's in charge. And then associates, tend to be assistants. And who's helping with research and doing field work? Well, it's the field producer, and of course the web producer is in charge of social media. All right. Number 10, what are some things a producer may write? A producer may often write copy for headlines, teases, bumps, and transitions. Almost everything else is written by the reporters themselves, but the stuff that links the stories together and kind of creates that flow, that's usually done by a producer. They kind of write like a skeleton or an outline of a script, and then the reporters fill in the holes, the stories with their own words. When is the original rundown created? So the original rundown is created during the morning staff meeting. What is a rundown? So a rundown is basically the list of stories that are going to be in the newscast. And it includes not only what the stories are, but who will read them, how long they are, what type of story it is, whether it's a package, a VO, a reader, and also what order the stories go in. So when I say I want you to be able to create a rundown, I don't necessarily want you to be able to create like an Excel spreadsheet like the ones that I show you in the slideshow here. But what I would like you to do is be able to do something similar to the last assignment you did, where I give you, 4 or 5 stories, and you tell me which order they would go in, which one would be a package, which one would be a reader, how long each one would be, that sort of thing. I may ask you, what kind of story belongs in the A block, what kind of story belongs in the D block. So that sort of thing. Okay, some things that are written on a rundown. So we got a whole list of elements that are written on a rundown, and you don't obviously need to know what all of them are. I would say if you know what 3 of these are, you'd be in good shape, and then you might be able to include some extras for extra points. Numbers appear on the newscast, status, slug, format, talent. All of these things listed here are acceptable for answers for what would appear on a rundown. How many blocks are in a newscast? So there's 4 blocks in the newscast, and they are the A, B, C, and D block. What goes in each block? So in the A block, you have your lead, most important stories. You have your hard-hitting news in the A block. In the B block, you have lighter news, and you also have the weather. The C block is sports, and the D block is your feature stories, your entertainment stories, and then your kickers or your feel-good stories. So that's what I want you to be able to identify as far as what goes in each block. And like I said, what I'll probably do is give you an example of the story and ask you which block it would go in. A kicker is a feel-good story that comes at the end of a newscast. Peak and valley format. So here's what I want you to know about peak and valley format. Hi, Gage. Okay, so I am going to read to you while I prepare my son a shake. So stick with me here. Okay, so a peak and valley format. Peak and valley format treats every block as its own mini newscast that can stand on its own. And what I want you to know is, what is the philosophy behind peak and valley format? The philosophy behind peak and valley format is that if every newscast can stand on its own, and you sprinkle some interesting stories in the B block and other blocks, that people will be more inclined to stick with the newscast until the end. This is the opposite of the inverted pyramid theory of news, which is that you put the most important stories first, and it goes down in descending order to less important stories, and then you put your least important stories last, because then they're easy to cut. So peak and valley format, you have peaks, which are interesting stories that viewers will want to see, and valleys, which are some of your duller stories. Commercials are considered valleys because no one likes to watch commercials. So that's the peak and valley format. And again, the theory behind it is if we sprinkle some more interesting stories and tease them throughout the newscast, then viewers will be more likely to stick with you during the newscast. All the joys of working from home. Okay, so that's the theory behind the peak and valley format. Some of the things that need to be in a peak and valley format, that means that each block must end with a strong story and have a strong tease. And each block should start with a good, strong story, even if it's not urgently important, even if it's slightly less important than the stories in the A block, at least they're strong stories, packages that would be of interest to the audience. All right. So question 18 is, what is the opposite of peak and valley? I already said that's the inverted pyramid format. What is happy talk, and where does most of it happen? Happy talk is banter between the anchors, and most of it happens in the C block because sports guys are great at happy talk, and a lot of times sports guys will kind of ad-lib a little bit. They don't actually write down a lot. They kind of are impromptu. Another person that you would rely on for happy talk, in addition to your sports guys, would be weather guys. So question 20, who's great for happy talk? That's going to be sports guy and weather guy, or sports gal and weather gal. Okay. What's the difference between a bump and a tease? Well, a bump and a tease are both things you say right before a break. However, a bump is generic. A bump is just, we'll be back with more, stay with us. A tease promotes a specific story or weather. We'll be back with that story on the City Council's decision on the budget. Stay with us. Okay. A toss is a transition to another anchor. So the news anchors often toss to sports and weather. The 5 technical aspects of producing discussed in class. Okay, so won't have to know all of these. I probably know a couple of them. And again, if you know extra ones, that's great for bonus points. So the 5 technical aspects of producing are downstream keys and graphics. Downstream keys is also shortened as DSK. Still pictures, the use of anchors, live shots, and timing. So within each of these, what I want you to know is, what is a DSK? It's a graphic that's 2 lines long, and it's often an identifier that appears at the bottom of the screen. So if you see, 2 lines at the bottom of the screen that say Sally Smith, News 5 anchor, that would be a DSK or a key. I want you to know what a box graphic is. Box graphic is an over-the-shoulder graphic. A side graphic is a more expansive graphic that appears to the side of the anchor, actually creating a split screen. And side graphics are great for lists because they're bigger, and so if you have a whole side of the screen available to you, you can actually write a list on there, like steps to prevent the coronavirus, or how to fry a perfect egg. What is a popular type of still picture used in television news? That's question number 27. Maps. Maps are very popular still pictures used in television news. What is meant by the phrase balancing the anchors? Balancing the anchors means that you give the anchors equal airtime and that you give them equally difficult stories. So if you have a lot of stories that have hard to pronounce names in them, or that are really technically specific or full of medical jargon, you want to make sure you're not loading one anchor down with all the words that are hard to say. So it's basically balancing their face time and balancing the difficulty of their stories. What are some pros of doing live shots? So there's several pros of doing live shots. First of all, you've paid for the equipment, so you might as well use it. Second of all, audiences tend to believe information from a reporter who's actually at the scene of a story. They figure since the reporter is there and seeing things with his or her own eyes, that they're more believable. And also, it's easier to get interviews face to face when you're live on the scene than it is to get them over the phone. And what is back timing? Back timing is calculating how much time you have left in the newscast. And it's called back timing because you kind of work from the back. You start off with 30 minutes, and then as time goes on, you subtract and lose more and more time. And we already talked about the news hole. That's that time that's actually allocated for news after subtracting everything else. And again, it's usually about 14 minutes. Okay, so that's it, guys. That is the only thing we had to cover in this news section for the final exam. So use this study guide and use this video to help you prepare for the final exam. Use the quiz. Okay, so it cut off somewhere there. I'm not really sure where, but that's it. This is it for the final exam. So go ahead and use this video. You can also go back to the study guide video we did for the television news quiz, and you can go over that, or you can just go over the corrected quizzes that I have sent you and use those for studying. So what I'm going to do is I am going to post the final exam to Canvas on Thursday. So it'll be live by Thursday at 8 a.m. And you will have until midnight on Friday if you're a graduating senior to turn in the final exam to me. And it can't be later than that because I'm going to have to spend the weekend calculating grades because I have to turn in grades for graduating seniors by Monday. The rest of you, those of you who are not graduating, you will have until next Friday. So you will have until May 7th to complete the final exam and get it sent back to me. And then I'll spend the following weekend grading your guys' final exams and figuring your final grades. So good luck. If you don't understand something, please get back to me, and you can call me with questions you might have. Also, if you're still working on those assignments, if you would like, you can turn those in a little bit early and I can make corrections. You can, fix whatever it is that needs to be fixed for higher grade if you want to do that too. But that final assignment is due, again, by Friday, end of the day for graduating seniors, and then the following Friday for everyone else. I'm sorry graduating seniors have to do everything a week early. It kind of is, makes this last week classes a little bit more hectic for you guys. I have really enjoyed teaching this class, and I wish all of you the best of luck, and I wish we could have done this in person, but hopefully I'll see you guys in the fall. So good luck, stay safe, and contact me if you need anything. Thanks.